Some men discover their wife's betrayal through lipstick on a collar or mysterious phone calls. Me, I got a 9-year-old's full frontal assault of brutal honesty over breakfast cereal. Daddy, why does Mommy kiss Uncle Graham when you're not home? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The spoon froze halfway to my mouth. Lucky Charms marshmallows floating in milk like tiny life preservers. My daughter Harper sat across from me at our kitchen table, her innocent blue eyes wide with curiosity, completely unaware she'd just detonated a nuclear bomb in our suburban Maine morning. Verena, my wife of 12 years, dropped her coffee mug. It shattered against the hardwood floor, sending ceramic shards and hot coffee in every direction. Her face went white as fresh snow, then flushed crimson. Harper, sweetheart, you must have misunderstood what you saw, Verena stammered, her voice shaking as she knelt to clean up the mess. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely pick up the pieces. I set my spoon down carefully, my mind racing. Graham Chase was Verena's brother-in-law, married to her sister Linda. He was also a successful investment consultant who drove a BMW and wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I'd never particularly liked the guy. Too smooth, too entitled, too quick with the fake smile and firm handshake. "What kind of kiss, princess?" I asked Harper, my voice surprisingly calm despite the hurricane building inside my chest. "The kind you and Mommy used to do," Harper said, spooning more cereal into her mouth. "You know, with the hugging and the mouth-touching. It was yesterday when you went to get groceries." Verena's face crumpled. She looked at me with desperate eyes, silently begging me not to pursue this in front of our daughter. But something cold and hard had settled in my stomach, and I wasn't feeling particularly merciful. "Go on, Verena," I said quietly. "Tell her she's mistaken." Verena opened her mouth, then closed it. No words came out. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire ready to snap. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Harper, finish your breakfast. We're going to see Grandma and Grandpa." "But what about Mommy?" Harper asked. "Mommy has some thinking to do." 20 minutes later, I was driving my daughter to my parents' house across town, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. Harper chattered happily in the back seat about her upcoming school play, blissfully unaware that her innocent observation had just blown up our family. My parents, Jim and Carol Stratton, lived in a modest ranch house near the harbor. They'd run the Glass House Hotel for 30 years before passing it down to me 5 years ago. The hotel was a converted Victorian mansion that had become the premier venue for weddings and corporate events in our coastal Maine town of Millfield. "Callum, what's wrong?" my mother asked the moment she opened the door. She had that uncanny parental ability to read trouble on her children's faces, even when those children were 42 years old. "Can you watch Harper for a few hours? I need to handle something." My father appeared behind her, his weathered face creased with concern. "Everything all right, son?" "Not really, but it will be." I kissed Harper goodbye and drove back home, my mind working through the implications. How long had this been going on? How many times had Graham been in my house, in my bed, while I was working at the hotel? How many of our friends knew? How many pitying looks had I missed? Verena was waiting in the living room when I returned, her eyes red from crying. She'd changed into her best dress, the blue one I'd always loved, and done her hair. It was pathetic, really, trying to seduce her way out of this mess. "Callum, we need to talk," she said. "No," I replied, walking past her toward my home office. "We really don't." I called my lawyer first. Then I called the hotel and told my assistant manager, Elise, that I'd be working from home for the rest of the day. Finally, I called my old friend Tommy Morrison, who'd left the police force to work as head of security at the hotel. "Tommy, I need a favor. Can you pull the security footage from the hotel for the past 6 months? Focus on the event spaces and private dining rooms. Sure thing, boss. Everything okay? It will be. The thing about running a hotel is that you learn to plan ahead, to anticipate problems before they become disasters. You develop contingency plans for everything from kitchen fires to wedding crashers. And you learn that information is power. By evening, I had a clear picture of what I was dealing with. The security footage showed Verena and Graham using the hotel's private spaces for their affair at least a dozen times over the past 4 months. They'd been clever about it, scheduling their meetings during off-peak hours when the staff was minimal, but not clever enough. I also had phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between them, credit card statements revealing expensive gifts Graham had bought for Verena, and a paper trail that painted a very clear picture of betrayal. When Verena finally worked up the courage to enter my office around 9 o'clock, I was ready for her. "Callum, please, let me explain," she began. I looked up from my computer, where I'd been reviewing the evidence. "Explain what exactly? How you've been screwing your brother-in-law in my hotel? How you've been lying to me for months? How you've been using our daughter as cover for your affairs?" She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that you've been having an affair with Graham Chase, using the glass house as your personal love nest, and lying to my face every single day." I turned the computer screen toward her. "Would you like to see the security footage?" The color drained from her face as she saw herself and Graham in a passionate embrace in the hotel's Rose Room, the same room where we'd held our wedding reception 12 years ago. "Oh, God," she whispered. "Yeah. Oh, God." I closed the laptop. "Here's what's going to happen, Verena. You're going to pack a bag and go stay with your sister. You're going to explain to Linda what you've been doing with her husband, and then you're going to call a lawyer because I'm filing for divorce. Callum, please, we can work through this. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. 4 months of moments?" I stood up, my voice rising. "Dozens of meetings? Hundreds of phone calls? That's not a mistake, Verena. That's a choice. You made your choice." She started crying then, the kind of ugly, desperate crying that might have moved me once upon a time. But that time had passed the moment Harper asked her innocent question. "What about Harper?" she sobbed. "What about her? You should have thought about Harper before you decided to destroy our family." I walked to the window, looking out at the harbor lights twinkling in the darkness. "You know what the really pathetic part is? If you'd just been honest, if you'd told me you were unhappy, we could have tried counseling. We could have worked on us. But instead, you chose to sneak around, to lie, to humiliate me in my own hotel." "I never meant for it to happen," she whispered. I turned back to her. "But it did happen, and now we all get to live with the consequences." The next morning, Verena was gone. She'd left a note saying she was staying with her sister and would have her lawyer contact mine. She'd also left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter, which struck me as oddly considerate given the circumstances. I picked up Harper from my parents' house and tried to explain the situation in terms a 9-year-old could understand. She took it better than I'd expected, with the resilience that children somehow possess in the face of adult disasters. "Are you and Mommy getting divorced like the Hendersons?" she asked. "Probably, sweetheart." "Will I still see her?" "Of course, she's still your mother." "Are you sad?" I considered the question. Was I sad, or was I just angry? "Yeah, Princess, I'm sad, but we'll be okay." And I meant it. We would be okay. But first I had some business to take care of. The Glass House Hotel had been my life for 5 years, but I'd never appreciated its surveillance capabilities quite like I did now. Tommy Morrison met me in the security office Monday morning with a stack of printed screenshots and a thumb drive full of video files. "I've got everything you asked for," he said, his weathered face grim. Tommy was 62, a former Marine who'd served 25 years with the Millfield Police Department before joining my staff. He had 3 daughters of his own and took a dim view of men who betrayed their families. "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad enough. They weren't just meeting here for closeness, boss. They were planning." He showed me footage from 3 weeks ago. Verena and Graham in the hotel's business center, hunched over paperwork and a laptop. The audio was muffled, but their body language suggested serious conversation, not romance. "Can you enhance the audio?" "Already did. You're not going to like it." He played the enhanced recording. Graham's voice came through clearly. "The hotel's books show a profit margin of 15%, but Callum's been skimming money into a private account. If we can document it, Verena can claim half of everything in the divorce, including his hidden assets." "They're trying to frame me for embezzlement?" "Looks that way. But here's the thing. I've been handling hotel security for 2 years, and I know you're clean. Whatever they're planning to plant in the books, it's fabricated." I studied the footage, watching my wife and her lover plot my financial destruction. The betrayal cut deeper than the affair itself. Closeness was one thing. People fell out of love, made mistakes, gave in to temptation. But this was calculated, malicious, designed to destroy not just my marriage, but my business and reputation. "Tommy, I need you to secure all financial records. Make copies of everything and store them off-site. If they're planning to doctor the books, I want the originals protected." "Already done. I had a feeling this was heading somewhere ugly." I spent the rest of the morning reviewing the evidence with my lawyer, Patricia Kellerman. She was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in high-conflict divorces and had a reputation for protecting her clients' interests with ruthless efficiency. "This is actually good news," she said, after reviewing the security footage. "Attempting to fabricate evidence of embezzlement could constitute fraud. If they follow through with this plan, they could face criminal charges." "I don't want them in jail," I said. "I just want them out of my life." "That's your choice, but you should know you have options. In the meantime, I'll file the divorce papers and request temporary custody of Harper. Given the evidence of adultery and potential fraud, the court should be sympathetic." That afternoon, I had lunch with my old friend David Brennan at Murphy's Pub downtown. David owned the town's largest insurance agency and had been my best man at the wedding. I'd known him since high school, and he was one of the few people I trusted completely. "I heard about you and Verena," he said after we'd ordered. "I'm sorry, man." "How much does everyone know?" David shifted uncomfortably. "Word gets around in a town this size. People are talking." "What are they saying?" "That Verena's been seen with Graham a lot lately, that she moved out, that you're getting divorced." He paused. "Some people are taking sides." "And which side are you on?" "Yours, obviously. But Callum, some of our friends, they're saying maybe you drove her to it. Working too much, neglecting your family. You know how it is." I felt a familiar anger building in my chest. "So it's my fault she cheated?" "I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you what people are saying. Maybe you should talk to them. Explain your side." "My side? My side is that I worked 60-hour weeks to build a business that could support my family. My side is that I never cheated, never lied, never betrayed anyone. But apparently, that makes me the bad guy." David looked uncomfortable. "Look, I'm on your side. But you might want to think about how you handle this. Going to war with everyone isn't going to help Harper." I left lunch feeling more isolated than ever. It was one thing to lose my wife to another man. It was another to discover that our mutual friends were already rewriting history to make me the villain. That evening, I picked up Harper from school and took her to dinner at her favorite restaurant, a family place called Rosie's that served the best fish and chips on the coast. I was trying to maintain some normalcy for her while my world fell apart. "Daddy, why are people looking at us funny?" Harper asked as we waited for our food. I glanced around the restaurant and noticed several familiar faces quickly looking away. Word had definitely gotten out. Sometimes when grown-ups have problems, other grown-ups like to gossip about it, I explained. "It doesn't mean anything important." "Are you in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. I'm not in trouble." But as we ate our dinner in relative silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was very much in trouble. Not legally. I had done nothing wrong. But socially, professionally, personally. My reputation was being dissected in every coffee shop and hair salon in town, and I had no control over the narrative. When I got home that night, there was a message on my answering machine from Linda Chase, Verena's sister and Graham's wife. Her voice was cold and furious. "Callum, I know what you're trying to do, spreading lies about Graham and Verena. My husband told me about your accusations, and they're disgusting. If you continue this campaign of harassment, we'll be forced to take legal action." I stared at the machine in disbelief. Graham had gotten to Linda first, convinced her that I was the one lying. Now I was facing not just the loss of my wife, but potential legal action from her family. I poured myself a scotch and sat in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of my former life. Wedding photos still hung on the walls, showing Verena and me young and happy, and convinced we'd last forever. Harper's toys were scattered across the floor, innocent reminders of what was at stake. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Callum, I just got off the phone with Verena," she said, without preamble. "She's very upset. She says you're trying to destroy her reputation with lies and doctored security footage." "Mom, now I know you're hurt, but you can't let anger make you do something you'll regret. If you two are having problems, you should try counseling, not this vindictive nonsense." I felt the world tilting beneath me. "Mom?" She admitted to the affair. "I have it on video." "Verena says you doctored those videos, that you're so desperate to avoid blame for the marriage failing that you're making up stories about her and Graham." "You believe her over me?" There was a long pause. "I believe you're both hurting and saying things you don't mean. But Callum, honey, you need to think about Harper. This kind of public battle isn't good for her." After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. Verena and Graham weren't just trying to destroy me financially. They were waging a public relations war, painting me as the unstable husband who couldn't accept responsibility for his failed marriage. And it was working. By the end of the week, the battle lines had been drawn, and I was losing badly. Graham and Verena had done a masterful job of controlling the narrative, positioning themselves as the victims of my vindictive lies, and me as the obsessive husband who couldn't accept that his marriage had simply run its course. The evidence I'd gathered, the security footage, the phone records, the credit card statements, was being dismissed as either fabricated or irrelevant. After all, who was more believable, the successful investment consultant and his grief-stricken sister-in-law, or the bitter hotel owner with access to surveillance equipment and an obvious motive to lie? I discovered just how effective their campaign had been when I stopped by the Millfield Country Club for my usual Thursday golf game with David Brennan, Mike Sullivan, and Jeff Porter. We'd been playing together for 8 years, and I considered these men among my closest friends. "Callum," Mike said as I approached the first tee, "we need to talk." Mike was a successful real estate attorney, a man I'd known since college. He was also Graham's lawyer, I learned that morning. "This is awkward," Mike continued, "but given my professional relationship with Graham, I don't think it's appropriate for us to continue our friendship while you two are in conflict." I stared at him. "Our friendship?" "You understand. It's nothing personal, just professional ethics." Jeff Porter, who owned the town's largest construction company, shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should postpone golf for a while, until things settle down." "Until what settles down?" I asked. "Until I accept that my wife cheated on me?" David put his hand on my shoulder. "Callum, nobody's taking sides here. We just think maybe you need some time to process everything that's happened." "Process what exactly?" "The divorce, the end of your marriage, the need to move forward instead of this." "Instead of what?" "The accusations, the surveillance, the harassment." Jeff's voice was gentle but firm. Look, we've all been through rough patches in our marriages. Sometimes they don't work out. But trying to destroy Verena and Graham isn't going to fix anything. I looked at these three men, people I'd considered brothers, and realized they'd already made their choice. Graham's version of events, that I was a vindictive husband manufacturing evidence to avoid accepting responsibility for my failed marriage, had won. So you believe I'm lying? We believe you're hurting, Mike said carefully. And hurt people sometimes do things they later regret. I picked up my golf bag and walked away without another word. The social isolation accelerated over the next few days. My usual lunch spot, the Anchor Inn, suddenly felt hostile. Conversations stopped when I entered, then resumed in whispers after I passed. The hostess, who'd always been friendly, now avoided eye contact. At Harper's school, other parents gave me a wide berth during pickup. The ones who did speak to me offered carefully neutral pleasantries that made it clear they'd heard the rumors and didn't want to get involved. Even my business began to suffer. The Glass House Hotel depended heavily on word-of-mouth recommendations and social connections. When the social elite of Millfield decided you were persona non grata, it had immediate financial consequences. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, the town's unofficial social coordinator and organizer of numerous high-end events, called to cancel her daughter's wedding reception. "I'm sorry, Callum," she said, her voice stiff with disapproval. "Given the current circumstances, we feel it would be best to find another venue." "What circumstances would those be, Mrs. Whitman?" "I think you know. We can't have our family celebration associated with unpleasantness." 3 more cancellations followed that day. Word was spreading that the Glass House Hotel was owned by an unstable man who harassed his ex-wife and fabricated evidence against innocent people. Who would want their special day associated with that kind of drama? That evening, I sat in my office reviewing the financial projections. If the cancellations continued at this rate, I'd be facing serious cash flow problems within months. Everything I'd worked to build was crumbling because of a lie I couldn't seem to disprove. Tommy Morrison knocked on my door around 8 o'clock. "Boss, we need to talk." "More bad news?" "I'm afraid so. I just got a call from Linda Chase. She's threatening to sue the hotel for invasion of privacy, claims we illegally recorded her husband and sister without consent." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. "Can she do that?" "Maybe. Maine has strict laws about recording people without permission. Even if we were within our rights, and I think we were, since it was our property, it could be expensive to defend." "What do you recommend?" Tommy sat down across from my desk. "Honestly, I think you should consider settling the divorce quietly and moving on. This fight is destroying you, and it's not going to bring Verena back." I stared at him. "You think I should just give up?" "I think you should pick your battles. You've got Harper to think about and a business to run. Sometimes the smart play is to cut your losses." After Tommy left, I poured myself another scotch and walked out onto the hotel's wraparound porch. The Glass House sat on a hill overlooking Millfield Harbor, and on clear nights you could see the lights of boats anchored in the bay. It was peaceful, beautiful, the kind of view that usually calmed my nerves. But tonight, it just reminded me of everything I stood to lose. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Verena. "Callum, this has to stop. You're hurting Harper with these accusations. Please, for her sake, let's handle this like adults." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Adults don't lie to their spouses for 4 months. Her reply came quickly. Adults don't stalk their ex-wives with security cameras. I turned off my phone and went inside. Tomorrow I decided I would start fighting back. But tonight, I just wanted to drink my scotch and mourn the life I'd lost. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning at Harper's soccer game. I'd been looking forward to it all week. 2 hours of normalcy, watching my daughter play the sport she loved, cheering from the sidelines like any other parent. I should have known better. I arrived at the field 15 minutes early, and set up my folding chair near the halfway line, the same spot I'd occupied for every game this season. Other parents were already there, but the usual friendly greetings were replaced by awkward nods and averted gazes. David Brennan was there with his son Tommy, who played on Harper's team. We'd driven to these games together for 3 years, taking turns bringing snacks for the kids. Today, he'd positioned his chair on the opposite sideline. When Verena arrived with Graham in tow, the atmosphere became electric with tension. She'd brought her lover to our daughter's soccer game, a move so brazen it took my breath away. They set up their chairs about 20 yards away from me, close enough that I could hear Graham's loud commentary about the game. "That's my girl!" Graham shouted when Harper scored a goal in the first half. "Way to go, Harper!" My girl. He was calling my daughter my girl in front of half the town. I kept my mouth shut and my eyes on the game, but inside I was seething. This was psychological warfare, designed to provoke me into a public outburst that would confirm everyone's belief that I was unstable and vindictive. At halftime, Harper ran over to me for her usual pep talk and juice box. She was sweaty and grinning, completely absorbed in the joy of the game. "Did you see my goal, Daddy?" "I saw it, Princess. It was beautiful. Uncle Graham said he's going to teach me some new moves." I felt my jaw clench. Uncle Graham doesn't know soccer, sweetheart. He said he played in college. I looked over at Graham, who was watching us with a smug smile. He'd never played soccer in his life. I knew because I'd heard him admit at a party 2 years ago that he'd been on the debate team, not any sports team. "Harper, go get some orange slices," I said. "The second half's about to start." After she ran off, I walked over to where Verena and Graham were sitting. Other parents watched with the fascination of spectators at a car crash. "Graham," I said quietly, "I need you to stop calling my daughter your girl." He looked up at me with mock surprise. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me. She's not your girl. She's my daughter." "Callum," Verena interjected, "please don't make a scene." "I'm not making a scene. I'm asking this man to stop acting like Harper's father." Graham stood up slowly, making a show of being reasonable in the face of my aggression. He was taller than me by 3 inches and had the soft build of a man who worked out at an expensive gym but had never done real physical labor. "Look, Callum, I understand you're going through a difficult time," he said loud enough for nearby parents to hear. "But Harper is going to be part of my life now, whether you like it or not." "Your life? Verena and I are together. That makes Harper my responsibility too." Something snapped inside me. "Your responsibility? You've been screwing my wife for 4 months, and now you think you're Harper's stepfather?" The conversations around us stopped. Parents turned to stare. Children looked up from their halftime snacks. "Callum, lower your voice," Verena hissed. "No, I won't lower my voice. I'm tired of pretending this is normal. I'm tired of pretending that you didn't destroy our family so you could be with this piece of garbage." Graham stepped closer, his face flushing red. "Watch your mouth, Stratton." "Or what? You'll do what you did to my marriage? Sneak around behind my back like a coward?" "I didn't sneak around. Verena came to me because she was lonely and neglected, because her husband was more interested in his hotel than his family." "Is that what you tell yourself? That you were doing her a favor?" David Brennan appeared at my shoulder. "Guys, maybe we should take this somewhere else." "No," I said, not taking my eyes off Graham. "I think everyone here should know exactly what kind of man Graham Chase is. The kind who seduces his sister-in-law while his wife is visiting her sick mother. The kind who uses a 9-year-old girl to hurt her father." "That's enough!" Verena stood up, her face pale with anger. "You're embarrassing Harper." I looked around and saw my daughter standing near the snack table, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Other children were staring too, sensing the adult drama they didn't understand. "I'm embarrassing her?" I turned back to Verena. "You brought your boyfriend to her soccer game and I'm the one embarrassing her?" He's not my boyfriend, she said quietly. We're together. This is our life now. Your life? What about Harper's life? What about the fact that she still thinks Uncle Graham is married to Aunt Linda? Graham's face went white. Linda and I are separated. Since when? Since last Tuesday when she found out about the affair? Mike Sullivan had joined our little group, along with Jeff Porter. The three men I'd considered my closest friends were now forming a protective circle around Graham and Verena. "Callum," Mike said in his lawyer voice, "you need to calm down." "I need to calm down? My wife cheats on me with her brother-in-law, tries to frame me for embezzlement, and brings her lover to my daughter's soccer game, and I need to calm down." "Nobody tried to frame you for anything," Jeff said. "You're being paranoid." Paranoid? I pulled out my phone and started the audio recording I'd saved from the hotel security system. Graham's voice filled the air. "The hotel's books show a profit margin of 15%, but Callum's been skimming money into a private account." The color drained from Graham's face as his own words played back. Several parents had moved closer to listen, their expressions shifting from disapproval of my behavior to confusion about what they were hearing. "Where did you get that?" Verena demanded. "From the security system at my hotel. The hotel where you two have been planning to destroy me." "You recorded us illegally," Graham sputtered. "I recorded you on my property, planning to commit fraud against me. There's a difference." David grabbed my arm. "Callum, put the phone away. This isn't helping anyone." I jerked away from him. "Helping anyone? David, this man just tried to steal my business and you're worried about helping him?" "I'm worried about you," David said. "You're making a fool of yourself in front of your daughter and half the town." I looked around at the faces surrounding me. Some were curious, some disapproving, some embarrassed to be witnessing this public breakdown of a marriage, but none of them were sympathetic. Even with Graham's own words as evidence, they still saw me as the problem. "You know what?" I said, putting my phone away. "You're right. I am making a fool of myself. I'm making a fool of myself by expecting any of you to care about the truth." I walked over to Harper, who was standing with her teammates, looking small and scared. "Come on, princess," I said gently. "Let's go home." "But the game isn't over," she protested. "It is for us." As we walked to the car, I heard Graham's voice behind me. "I feel sorry for that little girl, having a father who can't control himself." I stopped walking. Harper tugged on my hand. "Daddy, let's just go." I looked down at my daughter's upturned face, saw the worry in her eyes, and made a decision that would change everything. "You're right, sweetheart. Let's go home." But as I drove away from that soccer field, I wasn't thinking about going home. I was thinking about war. I spent the weekend planning, not the emotional, rage-fueled plotting of a man who'd been publicly humiliated, but the careful, methodical strategy of someone who'd finally accepted that playing by the rules was a losing game. Graham and Verena had taught me a valuable lesson at that soccer field. Truth didn't matter if nobody wanted to hear it. Evidence didn't matter if people had already made up their minds. The only thing that mattered was power, the power to control the narrative, to shape public opinion, to destroy your enemies while maintaining the moral high ground. Well, I could learn to play that game too. Monday morning, I called Patricia Kellerman and told her to accelerate the divorce proceedings. I wanted everything finalized as quickly as possible, with full custody of Harper and a settlement that left Verena with the minimum required by law. "Are you sure?" Patricia asked. Fighting for full custody could get expensive and ugly. It's already ugly, and I have evidence of her adultery, her attempt to commit fraud, and her introduction of her lover to our daughter without my consent. How do you like our chances? Better than I did last week. But Callum, are you prepared for the war this is going to start? The war already started. I just wasn't fighting back. Next, I called a private investigator named Sarah Chen, who specialized in financial fraud cases. I'd worked with her before when investigating insurance claims against the hotel. I need you to dig into Graham Chase's finances, I told her. Bank records, investment accounts, business dealings, everything. What am I looking for? Anything that doesn't add up. Graham lives well above what his stated income should support. I want to know where the money's coming from. That could take some time. I have time. Then I made the call I'd been dreading. I phoned Linda Chase, Graham's wife, and Verena's sister. Linda, it's Callum. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I think we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you, she replied coldly. I have something to show you, something you need to see. If it's more of your fabricated evidence, it's a video of your husband and my wife in bed together, in my hotel, 3 weeks ago. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. I'll meet you at Murphy's pub in an hour, she said finally. And Callum, this better not be some sick joke. Linda Chase was 41 years old, attractive in a wholesome way that reminded me why Graham had married her 15 years ago. She was also the mother of 2 teenage boys and had built a successful catering business from nothing. She deserved better than what her husband and my wife had done to her. I showed her the video on my laptop, watching her face crumble as she saw her husband betraying their marriage vows. When it was over, she sat in silence for a long time, tears streaming down her cheeks. How long? She asked finally. At least 4 months that I can document, probably longer. And Verena, she's my sister. I know. I'm sorry. Linda wiped her eyes and looked at me with a mixture of pain and determination. What do you want from me? I want you to know the truth, and I want you to stop protecting them. What does that mean? It means when people ask you about the divorce, you tell them what really happened. It means you stop letting Graham use you as an alibi for his affair. It means you file for your own divorce and make sure everyone knows why. Linda nodded slowly. He told me you were having a breakdown, that you were making up stories because you couldn't accept that your marriage was over. Do you believe that now? No. I believe my husband is a lying bastard who's been making a fool of me for months. We talked for another hour, comparing notes and timelines. Linda had suspected something was wrong. Graham's late nights, his secretive phone calls, his sudden interest in helping Verena with her emotional problems. But she'd trusted her sister and believed her husband's explanations. What are you going to do? I asked. I'm going to destroy him, she said quietly. I'm going to take everything he has and make sure everyone in this town knows what he did. Good. By Wednesday, the tide had begun to turn. Linda's divorce filing made the local newspaper. She'd made sure of that by holding a press conference where she detailed Graham's affair and his attempt to defraud me. The story painted a very different picture than the one Graham and Verena had been telling. Sarah Chen called with preliminary results of her financial investigation. Your instincts were right, she said. Graham Chase has been living well beyond his means for years. He's got credit card debt in 6 figures, a second mortgage on his house, and he's been borrowing against his retirement accounts. How has he been hiding it? Carefully managed minimum payments and a lot of financial sleight of hand. But there's more. I found evidence that he's been skimming money from his clients' investment accounts. I felt a cold satisfaction. How much? At least $200,000 over the past 3 years. Maybe more. This is serious criminal fraud, Callum. I have to recommend that you turn this over to the authorities. Send me everything you have. I'll decide what to do with it. That evening I had dinner with Harper at home, just the 2 of us. She'd been quiet since the soccer game incident, and I knew she was struggling to understand what was happening to our family. Daddy, are you and Mommy going to get back together? She asked over pizza. No, sweetheart, we're not. Is it because of Uncle Graham? I chose my words carefully. It's because your mother and I want different things now. Sometimes that happens with grown-ups. Will I still see her? Of course. She's your mother, and she loves you very much. Do you still love her? I thought about that question. Did I still love Verena? Or did I just love the memory of who she used to be before she became someone who could betray our family so completely? I love the person she used to be, I said finally. But people change, and sometimes they become people we don't recognize anymore. Harper nodded solemnly, processing this with the seriousness that children bring to adult problems they don't fully understand. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Princess, more than anything in the world. That night, after Harper was asleep, I made my final call. I dialed Graham's cell phone, knowing he would answer because he wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity to gloat about his victory at the soccer field. "Callum," he said, his voice smug. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you. Graham, I want to meet with you tomorrow night. Just the two of us." "Why would I want to do that?" "Because I have something that belongs to you. Something you've been looking for." There was a pause. "What are you talking about?" "The financial records you and Verena were trying to plant in my hotel's books. The ones that would make it look like I was embezzling money." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. The fabricated documents that would support your fraud case against me. The ones that would give Verena half of everything in the divorce." Another pause, longer this time. "What do you want?" "I want to make a deal. Meet me at the Glass House tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Come alone." "Why would I trust you?" "Because if you don't, those documents go to the FBI, along with some other financial records that I think they'd find very interesting." I hung up before he could respond, then sat back in my chair and smiled for the first time in weeks. Tomorrow night, this would all be over. Graham arrived at the Glass House Hotel at exactly 9 o'clock Thursday night, his BMW pulling into the empty parking lot like a shark gliding into dark water. I watched from my office window as he sat in his car for several minutes, probably trying to decide if this was a trap. It was, of course, but not the kind he was expecting. I met him at the front entrance, unlocking the door and gesturing him inside. The hotel was closed to guests. I'd made sure of that by blocking off the entire evening for maintenance. The only people in the building were me, Tommy Morrison in the security office, and Elise Martinez, my assistant manager, who was handling some paperwork in the back office. "Callum," Graham said as he stepped into the lobby. He was trying to project confidence, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted around the empty space. "I have to say, this is all very dramatic. I've learned a lot about drama from you and Verena these past few weeks." I led him to the hotel's main dining room, an elegant space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. I'd set up a small table in the center of the room with 2 chairs and a manila envelope. "Please, sit down." Graham remained standing. "Just tell me what you want, Stratton. I want you to understand your situation." I opened the envelope and spread its contents across the table. "These are copies of your financial records for the past 3 years. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment account summaries." His face went pale as he recognized the documents. "I also have records of the money you've been stealing from your clients," I continued. $237,000 to be exact, skimmed from retirement accounts belonging to people who trusted you with their life savings. "You can't prove anything," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Actually, I can. My investigator is very thorough. She found the offshore account in the Cayman Islands where you've been hiding the money. She also found the forged documents you used to authorize the transfers." Graham sat down heavily in the chair across from me. "What do you want?" "I want you to leave town. Tonight. I want you to disappear from my life, from Verena's life, and from Harper's life. Forever. And if I don't? Then tomorrow morning, I turn all of this over to the FBI. By tomorrow afternoon, you'll be under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and securities violations. You'll spend the next 10 to 15 years in federal prison." Graham stared at the documents spread across the table. "You can't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this when you decided to steal from your clients to finance your affair with my wife." Those people won't even miss that money. They're all wealthy. They're retirees, Graham. Teachers and nurses and construction workers who saved for 40 years so they could have a decent retirement. And you stole from them to buy expensive dinners and hotel rooms for your affair. He looked up at me with desperate eyes. What about Verena? What happens to her? Verena made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. She loves me. She loves the idea of you, the successful investment consultant with the BMW and the expensive suits. What do you think she's going to do when she finds out you're broke? When she realizes that everything you've given her was bought with stolen money? Graham's shoulders sagged. You're destroying my life. No, I'm giving you a choice. Leave town tonight and start over somewhere else, or go to prison for the next decade. What's it going to be? He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the harbor lights. Finally, he spoke. If I leave, what guarantee do I have that you won't turn me in anyway? You don't. But if you stay, I guarantee I will turn you in. What about Linda? My kids? What about them? You should have thought about your family before you decided to cheat on your wife and steal from your clients. Graham stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. This is insane. You can't just force me to abandon my entire life. Watch me. He turned back to face me, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the old Graham, the entitled, arrogant man who thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. You know what, Stratton? Maybe I'll take my chances with the FBI, maybe I'll fight this thing, and maybe while I'm fighting it, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows what kind of man you really are. What kind of man is that? The kind who uses private investigators to stalk his ex-wife's lover. The kind who blackmails people with illegally obtained evidence. The kind who would destroy a man's family to get revenge. I smiled. You're right, Graham. I am that kind of man. I learned it from you. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a digital recorder, setting it on the table between us. What's that? That's a recording of our conversation tonight, including the part where you just admitted to stealing money from your clients. His face went white. You recorded me without my consent? Just like you and Verena recorded your conversations about framing me for embezzlement. Turnabout is fair play. Graham lunged across the table, grabbing for the recorder. I was ready for him, catching his wrist and twisting it until he cried out in pain. Sit down, Graham. He stumbled backward, clutching his wrist. You're insane. I'm thorough. The same way you were thorough when you planned to destroy my business and steal my daughter. I never tried to steal Harper. Really? Then what was all that my girl nonsense at the soccer game? What was the plan to teach her new moves? You were positioning yourself as her new father figure while simultaneously destroying her real father. That's not what I was doing. That's exactly what you were doing. You wanted my wife, my daughter, and my money. You wanted my entire life. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the harbor. The funny thing is, if you'd just had an affair, I probably would have let it go. Divorced Verena, moved on, tried to co-parent Harper as best we could. But you had to get greedy. You had to try to destroy me completely. Callum. So now I'm returning the favor. I turned back to face him. You have 1 hour to get out of town. If you're still here tomorrow morning, I call the FBI. Graham looked at me with a mixture of hatred and fear. What about my things? My house? My business? Liquidate what you can tonight. Abandon the rest. Consider it the cost of doing business with other people's money. He started toward the door, then stopped. Verena will never forgive you for this. Verena will never forgive you for lying to her about who you really are. When she finds out you're broke, when she realizes that everything you gave her was stolen, she'll understand exactly what kind of man she threw away her marriage for. After Graham left, I sat alone in the dining room for a long time, listening to the silence of the empty hotel. I felt strangely calm, as if a weight I'd been carrying for months had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Tommy Morrison appeared in the doorway. "Boss? Everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Tommy. Better than fine." "What about Chase?" "Mr. Chase has decided to relocate. I don't think we'll be seeing him again." The next morning, Graham's BMW was gone from his driveway. His house was empty, his office cleared out. He'd vanished as completely as if he'd never existed, leaving behind only a note for Linda explaining that he was sorry and that she deserved better. Verena called me that afternoon, hysterical. "What did you do to him?" she screamed. "Where is he?" "I have no idea where Graham is," I replied calmly. "Have you tried calling him?" "His phone goes straight to voicemail. His office says he's taken a leave of absence. Linda won't talk to me." Maybe he realized that stealing money from retirees to finance an affair wasn't the best long-term strategy. There was a long silence. "What are you talking about?" "Ask Linda. She has all the financial records now." Verena hung up without another word. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. I got full custody of Harper, the house, and the hotel. Verena got a small settlement and visitation rights. She also got the truth about Graham, that he was a thief and a fraud who had used her as much as he had used his clients. She moved to Portland, where she got a job with a small event planning company. We maintained a civil relationship for Harper's sake. But the woman I had been married to for 12 years was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Harper adjusted better than I'd expected. Children are resilient, and she seemed to understand that sometimes families change in ways that nobody wants, but everybody has to accept. 6 months after Graham disappeared, I received a postcard from Las Vegas. No message, just a picture of the Strip at night. The postmark was from 3 weeks earlier, and there was no return address. I threw it in the trash without showing it to anyone. The Glass House Hotel recovered its reputation and became more successful than ever. Apparently, there's something appealing about a man who fights for his family and his business, even if his methods are unconventional. I never heard from Graham Chase again. Sometimes I wondered if he'd managed to start over somewhere, if he'd learned anything from the experience. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. I had won. Not just the divorce, not just custody of Harper, not just the preservation of my business. I had won something more important. The knowledge that when someone tries to destroy your life, you don't have to be a victim. Sometimes, you have to be willing to become the villain in someone else's story to remain the hero in your own. And sometimes, that's exactly what justice looks like.